God-sized story.
Hello and welcome to another episode of God-Sized Stories. I'm very blessed. This is a very exciting special episode with Jeremiah at Caffeinated Records. How are you today, Jeremiah?
Oh, I am good. How are you, Craig?
I'm excellent. As I said, I'm so excited. I'm in your studio space. It's so awesome in here. You were showing me around. You have great big plans, and I'm so excited to hear more about them, but also for you to share that with me and also for you to share it with the audience. But first, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Well, my name is Jeremiah. I grew up in a small town, Island Lake, actually where this studio is located. I grew up about 2 minutes from here, which is beautiful. I've always lived in this area, never really moved on. I was a homeschooled kid, so I lived my life not just in this town, but in one house. Didn't even go off to college. But yeah, so I've pretty much been around in this area. My story is about as vanilla as it gets in a lot of ways.
Hey, vanilla's still delicious.
That's true. Honestly, I prefer vanilla. I mean, why make it complicated? But it's been interesting because in that there's been a lot of unique struggles and things I've had to wrestle through with my relationship with the Lord. I grew up in a church of about 300 people. It was a smaller church that was, nearby, and there was just a lot of ways that God challenged the things that I just grew to be surrounded with, and so growing up in the church was a good experience. But yeah, it's just been a collection of things that brought me to where I am right now. Lord's been doing some crazy stuff, especially lately. I would say the last maybe 4 years of my life have been the whirlwind of stories. Before that, it's just, awkward homeschool kid in Chicago suburbs,
Hey, you'll be very comforted to know you are by far not the first homeschooled person I've had on the podcast. You're at least, off the top of my head, at least number 4, but maybe more than that.
That sounds like a pretty accurate percentage of our representation. Yeah. Were you homeschooled, Craig?
I was not. I actually went to a very small public school, country, almost a one room schoolhouse kind of deal.
Yes.
So I actually didn't come to know the Lord until high school. So homeschooling was never going to happen.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Honestly, I didn't even know that homeschooling was a thing until high school.
A lot of people didn't before COVID.
Now
everyone's doing it, and I'm like, And they're talking about how hard it is to do this and that, and I'm like, that was just third grade for me.
Well, I'm so excited today to talk to you about your life and the direction that God has taken you, especially as you were saying the last few years, big time. Why don't you get into that a little bit?
Sure. Well, so I'm 22 years old right now. So the last 4 years have been adulthood, and it's interesting because pretty much every year there's been a unique but different but very big story of something God's been doing. A lot of them are kind of crappy stories, and they're long stories and very separate. I could fill up a season of your podcast if you want. But it's just interesting the way that each year the Lord brought me through something, but taught me something out of it. And I think the pinnacle of all of that probably came in, I want to say it was 2018. Yeah. Which was the first time I really started to question my faith. It came after, a breakup, of course. But you know how people say that, or you've heard it said, that you learn a lot about yourself in a breakup?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was far more true than I wanted it to be. And, that's another story for another time. But the long and short of it is I came out of that spot being like, God, I ended this relationship because I felt like you told me to, so you better be real. And as soon as I opened that can of worms, I was like, I've never questioned if God is real or not. And that put me through a process. Again, it was somewhat a vanilla process. It was not like, I'm going to dive off the deep end, I'm going to do all this stuff, although I wanted to. But it definitely put me in a really uncertain place internally. of just like, I don't know how I feel about anything. And I began to slowly rebuild those pieces.
Okay. Well, that's one of the things I love about God is like he sees the vanilla stories and he sees the grand rocky road covered in fudge and all these crazy stories.
Yeah.
And he sees them all the same as joy of these are his children. We are his children. And he gets to save us. He gets to tell these stories through our lives. So he gets all the glory either way. So that's why I love this podcast. That's why I love testimonies from as simple as, yeah, I was saved when I was 4. I had great parents to, yeah, I was a crackhead and the Lord saved me in a homeless shelter. Like from A to Z, he's there and is glorified. And I love hearing every single one. So
Yeah.
I there's no shame in a vanilla story.
So good. Yeah, because for a long time in youth group, in high school, you'd hear the kids talk about like, I struggled with, it could be anything, but it was like some huge thing and like rock bottom. And then I felt almost ashamed in my story that was like, yeah, I didn't do a lot of bad stuff. I mean, like I was far from a perfect kid, but
Sure.
But like I got to a point where internally in my mind, I kind of wished I had like been addicted to crack or I had wanted to kill myself through most of my life. And that was a weird kind of pride. And that was actually the biggest thing that God was like, just so you know, you're not perfect. You've got this thing. And that was a process for sure.
Yeah. Take us on then the next step of your journey. Because eventually I want to kind of get to talking a little bit about where we are. But
Yeah.
where would come next for you?
From like 2018 and that.
Yeah.
So from that, I slowly started to build back my faith. I never stopped going to church or even serving in my church. I'd been serving both in the worship team and the youth group of my church, and I was really open with the process that I was at, and they were really gracious to not like cast judgment or shun me, but really welcome me in. So I continued to be a part of all that and slowly building back, or really just building for the first time, I guess, what I believed and why I believed it. And slowly, the Lord actually began to call me to a different church. And this spans some bit of time. Like it wasn't hard and fast. Like I struggled with my faith, I figured it out, then I left. Like there was a lot more time that passed in between that. But I think the biggest steps of me really solidifying, okay, this is what I believe, was when the Lord began calling me to a different church, a church that had some different theology than what I grew up with.
Okay.
And it wasn't fundamentally huge. It was subtle. And when I came into it, I was really guarded, and which I think was a wise quality, right? But as I began to process what I was hearing and take it in and think about it and reference it to scripture and like, what is this? Like, not only did I not see anything that was like a red flag, but in fact, I found passages of scripture and stories that I had known like my entire life, all of a sudden in a different lens, and they like made more sense.
Yeah.
And I was like, what?
When you're
What
looking
is
through
this?
them through the correct lens.
Right. And so that was just it. I was like, this must be a more correct lens than what I grew up with. Or at least, like, I don't want to paint too black and white, because I think all church denominations have value and things that they elevate, and they also have like their baggage. And that's just the nature of a group of humans trying to create a system on how to worship God. Like there's going to be really healthy things and some unhealthy things. But I just know for me and the process that the Lord was putting me through, there was nothing but healthy things in that process of me transitioning. So,
Amen. So I guess continue on from there. Like you've got a new church now.
yeah.
You're really figuring out what's next for you. Where did the Lord lead you next? I know that's a bigger question because, as we were even talking earlier, nobody even fully knows, I think, where is the next goal.
Right.
You have plans, but ultimately God's plans.
Yeah. So, well, I guess I can kind of get into a little bit with this recording studio, because in some ways I have to like backtrack a little bit into earlier in my life, but also this is a very new thing. So this recording studio has only been around for less than 5 months right now. and just its existence is proof that God is moving in it. We can get into that, but I always wanted to do something in music. I had been playing guitar since I was, I don't know, 9 or 10 years old.
Wow.
And like helping out on worship teams, or when like I worked at a summer camp for a while and I did song time and leading worship in my youth group in high school, and I was doing all of this stuff. And when people said like, what do you want to do with your life when you're an adult, when you grow up, what's your career? I had no idea.
Right.
I wanted to say something with music, but I knew I was good, but I knew I wasn't like some like top the line Nashville musician.
Sure.
And I was like, everyone has that desire inside their heart to be this famous person. And I was like, I don't even know if I want that, but if I did, I don't think I could get there. And so I felt like that was the only option to have a career in music. And so by the time I graduated high school, my resolve was, I want to do something in music, but I don't know if there's anything I could do in music. So I'm just not going to go to college, because until I know what I want to do, I don't want to put a bunch of money at it.
Wisdom.
There was definitely some wisdom in it, but it was a tough resolve too, because in another sense, I was just working extra full time at a fast food job, and all my friends went off to college to pursue their career, and I was working fast food and had my small rinky-dink apartment. And in one perspective, you're living more of the adult life than they are. Sure.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
But in another respect, they're all potentially at least setting themselves up for success in their whole life, and I'm working fast food. And so that was an insecurity for a while. But I still felt strongly in my resolve that like college wasn't the thing, and I didn't know what was. So I kind of sat in that position for a couple years. That would have been between like 2014 through like 2017. This was like when I was in high school and a couple years after. And then beginning of 2018, around that same process of me figuring out what I believed and all that stuff, I knew that I still had this desire to do something with music, but I also knew it wasn't going to happen while I worked this like full-time job at this fast food restaurant. I had started to get into recording music just at home. I didn't really know what it looked like. I started this holiday-based band with two friends of mine. We called ourselves the Holiday Boys, and we wrote songs about holidays, and we made little videos, and it's still public. You could probably find it. But that was the first introduction I had to recording music, and it was cool because since we had different genres for different holidays, like they had different themes, I would listen to that genre of music like critically, like what are they doing? How can I replicate it but do it originally? And so it created a really strong basis and like foundation. But once I started to want to publish it, I needed to come up with a record label name.
Sure.
For just the program to like categorize it properly. They're like, what's your record label? And I was like, shoot, I need a name. And that probably took me like a week or two. I was like, I can't publish my music until I come up with a name. And I don't know what name.
I totally understand that. It took me forever to come up with a name just for the podcast. And I'm just like, ugh.
Yeah. And so I sat on that for a while, and eventually I landed on the name Caffeinated Records. And this was end of 2017 when this happened.
Okay.
And the idea of that was just paying homage to the number of late nights that I had spent writing and learning how to produce music, because I would work until like 10:30 at night because I would close at the fast food restaurant, and then go and record music until like 4 a.m.
Absolutely.
And so I would just drink a lot of Monster and I would record music, and that was just my thing. That was what I did. And it helped me get through that specific breakup, just like pour myself into comedy holiday music.
There you
Let's
go.
do it. And so Caffeinated Records, and at least the name came to exist, which is great. And so I was just kind of in that spot recording some music for fun, because I'm like, this is awesome. I'm like contributing to a catalog of music. I could make a playlist with my favorite artists and me. And like, this is awesome. But then I was like, you know what? I would love to open a recording studio. And I thought, I don't know what that looks like. Maybe that's years and years away. Maybe I have to go to college for that then. Now's the time. I wasn't sure. And I don't remember what day it happened, but I remember suddenly it clicking of this idea of what could really take shape. And that was to take this Caffeinated Records idea and to one day open up a coffee shop recording studio. So one place that has the recording studio, and we're bringing in musicians and we're creating just music together, but also have that contribute to like the coffee culture, right?
Yeah.
So the whole coffee is almost more of a lifestyle than it is a drink, I feel like.
I definitely would agree with that.
Like if I say coffee culture, you're like, I know what that is.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's just this real community sense to it. And so I realized there's a lot of similarities in the music scene as well. And I was like, man, how cool would it be if I could really merge those worlds in one space?
Yeah.
And I'm more of an extroverted person too. I love people.
Yeah.
And I know you're the same way.
100%.
Right. And so I was just like, this would be such a cool idea. But at that point, it was a pipe dream. I was like, this would be super cool, granted, but I never went to college. I have no idea about business. I have no idea about music. Like, I've recorded stuff in my basement, and it's probably not very good. I knew I liked it, but I couldn't tell if it was a competent mix or anything like that.
Sure.
So I kind of expected or treated it like something that was a cool idea but would never happen. I always had ideas. I was an ideas person, you know? That was just what I did. I would be like, late at night, I'd be like, this is a really cool idea. That'll never happen, but it's cool. That was basically how it existed then for a couple years. I got so into it, though, that I drew up an idea for a logo, and I talked to a friend of mine who did graphic design, and I paid her $200 to design me a logo. And it's the logo that we're using now, but it was years before anything came into being. And I was like, I don't know if I'll ever use this, but it's really cool. And so there it was. It was just kind of like, I'd love to do a recording studio, but I don't know how or when or if. So it is what it is. And every now and then I would like pitch the coffee shop recording studio ideas to friends. And I think that was when the change started to begin, because usually when I would present one of my ideas, they'd be like, that'd be really funny, or okay, whatever, Jeremiah, right? Because most of them were pretty dumb ideas. But consistently, people would say, that would actually really work. Like, that's a really cool idea. And it just like planted something in me. And I just began to really think through, like, this could happen realistically. Like, this isn't just some far out pipe dream. And one day I was at Starbucks. I actually worked at Starbucks for a collection of years. I came to the realization that if I was going to pursue something in music, recording or whatever, I couldn't do it while working full time at that fast food restaurant.
Absolutely.
And so I got the job at Starbucks so I could work early morning and then have my afternoons to figure that out.
Yeah.
Figure the rest out. So while I was working at Starbucks one day, I was talking to one of my coworkers who was also pursuing the music scene, but in a different sense. And I pitched the idea, and he said, you know what? That sounds like a really good idea, and my encouragement to you is to just do it. Just step in. Like, you don't know all the steps of how it's going to happen, but just, he said, just send it, bro. And I was like, okay, all right. And that really got me excited. But again, it was like, I don't know how that would happen. I don't even know how to start a business. What does that even mean? Do you just proclaim it and then it exists?
I declare business.
Actually, fun fact, it's pretty much that. So that brings us to this year. No, it's 2021 now. This brings us to last year, 2020.
Infamous.
Yeah, what a year. So coming into 2020, I felt the Lord put it on my heart to rent a house with like 5 of my friends. But the idea of it was to really create community. I've always had that desire in my heart to have a space and to use it for community. And I think that's what like undergirds the coffee shop recording studio.
Sure.
It's always been this culture, this community.
Yeah.
And so I felt like the Lord was putting that on my heart to create a community space where I could minister to those friends of mine, those guys, but also we could kind of collectively be on a mission to use this space as like a sacred space.
Yeah.
So I started pursuing that, and it's actually really a good thing that didn't happen because, you know, lockdown happened like a month afterwards, and half of these guys were out of jobs, and I was like, this would have been so bad. So it's good that the Lord changed it. Anyway, I had heard about this recording studio space because the people that owned it or that leased the space is a family-run business that my family knows. And so I'd been in communication with them. And so I knew that there was like a recording studio space near me, but it was always full. Somebody was leasing the building. And so I had never seen it. Like I said, this is like 2 minutes from where we live, where I grew up. And so I've driven past it all the time, my entire life. But I got a call and from the guy, the owner's son. His name is Jason. And Jason said, just so you know, this space is available. And I was like, man, listen, I am trying to do this like rent a house thing with like 5 other guys, and I'm working part-time at Starbucks so I can pursue my music career. I was like, that's not in the cards. There's just no way that I could add all of these expenses. It's just not going to happen even if I wanted it to. Then the world shut down, and some interesting things started to happen. I'd been living with my sister and her husband. Her husband has cystic fibrosis. In case you don't know what that is, it's a lung deficiency disease. Essentially, it's something that you're born with. It's at least as of right now, there's not a cure for it. So it's a respiratory issue, and so COVID being a respiratory related disease, like if he got it, there's a good chance he could die from it.
That's super underlying conditions right there.
Right. So they quarantined really hardcore, and I was like, I'm probably still going to be working at Starbucks. I'm going to be doing this and that. I can't really quarantine the same way that you guys will have to. So I moved out. I moved in with family friends from my old church, and in my mind it was like 3 weeks. So they didn't charge me rent because it was just a super temporary thing.
Sure.
And I explained that because my cost of living began to go down. I was driving a lot less. I didn't have to pay rent. There was all these things that went down. At the same time, Starbucks, they do take really good care of their employees. In that time, they started paying everyone that was still working an extra $3 an hour.
Dang.
Yeah. And
dang, that's a lot of money.
And the stores around my store closed because enough employees just didn't feel safe working.
Sure.
So everyone came through our store, and people tipped through the roof. So all of a sudden, like, my expenses went down, my income went up, and to go even farther, my old church reached out to me because they were having issues with their live streams and just getting it to work. And so I brought my skills, what I knew, my understanding of things and my equipment, and I did one of their church services, like pre-production. So we filmed it all and I edited it. And by the end of that weekend, they offered me a job. So all of a sudden, I say again, my cost of living went down and my income more than doubled.
Whoa.
Which was not a situation that I had ever been in before.
A very envious position of most people, especially for 2020.
Right. So my life up to that point looked like I had a cash budget system. I had my envelopes. I would, withdraw the money from the bank on payday. I would pass out the money on its respective places, and I'd run out of money before I ran out of envelopes.
I bet.
Like, that was my life. And so for the first time, I had like a huge amount of margin, of excess. And that continued for a collection of weeks and months through the summer. And as this was happening, I got the sense that maybe I should use this for something.
Yeah.
Something adult is what was in my mind. So in my mind, I was saving for a down payment on a house.
Okay.
So what I did was I opened a Discover Online savings account, and I started like pretty much just stockpiling as much money as I could into this account to see how fast I could get to a higher number. Yeah. Almost like it was a high score, right? So it was just like, do I need to eat out today? Nah, I could put that in the savings account.
Yeah.
And within like 2-3 months, I had almost $7,000. Dang. Right. Which, again, not a flex. I had never been in that position before in my life. And so
sounds like 100% the Lord.
Exactly. And it gets crazier. So I had been feeling, at this point, I had been working for my old church, and it was throughout the week because churches were closed. But when we transitioned into wanting to open up again, I ended up there Sundays and no longer at the church that I had been at. And I felt the Lord calling me to go back to the church that I had moved to, that he had called me to. But I wasn't sure how to do that because there was a huge need, clearly.
Yeah.
Like they need, and it was really encouraging to be able to help and to offer what I had. But I felt like it was the call on my heart to move back to my church.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to get a job there. I was like, it'd be perfect if I could talk to them and they say, yeah, we have a job for you in 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. Then I could come back to the church I was working at, my old church, and say, listen, I'm taking this job in 4 months or whatever, and I can be with you guys until that point in time, and then I'll move over. And it seemed like a great plan. But when I talked to, I think it was the executive pastor at my church, he said, appreciate you reaching out. If we had a job position, you would be the first in line, but we don't have one. And I was kind of disappointed. But then he said, but we have contract work for you to do.
Hey.
Right, that's cool. I had done some contract work for them already, but my life felt so hodgepodge at this point. It was like, I'm doing work for this church, I'm doing some work for Starbucks, I'm doing some guitar lessons on the side, I'm doing all of this with these random things. And I was like, I don't know if I need another random thing. I want stability and security. It's something like cohesive. And that was when I believe the Lord gave me a vision for things. And to realize that if I take all of these hodgepodge things and I put them under the name of a business, then it's no longer a hodgepodge of things. It's actually all work for one business. And I realized if I leaned into that, I could go in the direction of not just the video production work I've been doing, but recording as well, and that I'd need a space for that. And that was when I remembered there was a recording studio 2 minutes from my house that was empty. And I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
And so I sat on that for a second. Well, actually, that's not true at all. I immediately called Jason. I was like, Jason, is that space still available? Tell me it's available. But deep down, I was like, it's 2020. Who's starting a business right now? Who's leasing a building? No one's doing that. And it took him a while to get back to me, but he finally did and got me in touch with his dad, who was the guy that ultimately owns the business, both the location and the business that's in front of it. It's a car restoration business that they run. So anyway, the story gets crazier though, because I've reached out to Brian and basically say like, this is my shtick. This is my thoughts. I'd love to talk more about it. And we talked through it for a bit, and he seemed like that was something he was interested in, but he knows my dad pretty well. And I think I found this out from my dad. I'm not sure, but the long and short of it is he's a Christian guy. They're a Christian family. And when the last tenant moved out of this space, he considered tearing it down, using the full commercial lot, because this studio only takes up like a subset of the full lot. But he felt the Lord told him to keep the space as it was and to keep the rent at a more reasonable price so he could use it as a ministry to help someone start a business.
Oh my gosh.
Right? I know. When I heard that, I was like, what the crap? And then it gets crazier.
Oh my God.
Because Brian spent some time in prayer, and he told my dad this. He said, normally I wouldn't get into a business situation like this with somebody that's as young as he is, but I went to the Lord about it, and he told me he's the one. And I was like, shoot, I'm starting a business. So this was like July of 2020.
Sure.
Middle of everything going crazy. Economy's in a shambles, and I'm like, I should start a business. I should do that. And but with just the ordering of everything, the timing of how things happened,
exactly.
I was like, this has been a desire on my heart for a long time, and it was an unrealistic one in my mind, and now it's literally fallen into my lap, and not just like one thing, but countless things that I couldn't have orchestrated have happened. And so I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I'm doing it. And so I spent the rest of July and the month of August just learning what I had to do to start a business, the process I had to go through, the steps I had to take. And yeah, I made it happen. But the thing that made it crazier, that the connection I don't know if you put together, is I had this space now, and I also had $7,000 sitting in a savings account, just sitting there.
Yep.
And so I was able to, with that money and a small loan from my parents, fund this space without a loan from the bank.
That's nice.
Right. So my parents gifted me some, they loaned me some. So I have a really, really small debt to my parents, not to any bank. And so I'm fundamentally
wonderful.
speaking debt-free in this business. And it's been crazy. So in the months since then, since September when we opened, it's been a whirlwind of things. It's been learning what it means to start a business, to run a business, to wear every hat, right? Like I need to manage social media, and I need to take care of the facility, and I need to bring in clients, and I need to take care of those clients.
Yep.
And like every facet of it. But since the Lord made his presence so clear through the beginning, I've been really intentional with bringing his presence, like coming before him and with every decision going forward. And I've really needed it because we as a business right now are breaking even, which is actually a blessing. Like from what I know about businesses.
Well, and especially 2020.
Right. But yeah, and even businesses just alone, like in their first year, they're not
not
profitable.
No.
And break even is a sign of success. And so that much more so in 2020. So that's hardly a complaint. In fact, I've started to see that it's been more of the Lord just continuing to show his nearness because I've had to be fully dependent on him. Like a good collection of months now at this point, I've had to say, I have to pay, $1,000, $1,200 tomorrow, and I've got $600 in my account. Don't know how that's going to happen. And that's been more than one occasion. Like, that's been consistent, but we're not in debt. I don't owe anyone right now. We're still in a good spot, and the Lord just continued to provide. But it's been stressful. Like I've had to talk to friends and have them encourage me and remind me of like, what the Lord said, and he's going to provide. It's his business, right?
Yep.
So it's just been super good. And it's funny, I've always been a dreamer, like I said. And so even this space right now, I've got so many plans, so many things. It's like, I know this is going to happen. I don't know when, but I know it's going to happen. Like big picture, that coffee shop recording studio is going to happen.
I believe it.
And again, there's more things that I'm unqualified for. I don't know about, but I know I'm going to learn or bring in other people that do know.
Exactly. Especially once you get to that size, you will need other people.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like at that point, that's when you lean on people that bring in expertise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So big picture, like 10 years from now is my goal to open the coffee shop, and we'll move locations and do all this stuff. I want to have like the back wall of the coffee shop be just like a giant window into the recording studio, have like a stage for open mic nights, just really a space designed to build a culture and a community where if you come in and you don't buy a cup of coffee, but you're hanging out, like I don't want that to be like a stigma or a bad thing. I want to invite just people to be here. I've been convicted that the business model of this studio, of this business is we're making good content. We're recording good songs and we're going to put our best out there, but we're building a community and we're selling an experience. That sounds like a weird way to put it.
No, but it's what you're doing though.
Right.
It's important.
Yeah. Like the drive in my heart of if we had a successful like project with a client is if they walked out thoroughly enjoying the time that they spent here. And that's for me the mark of a success, because if they thoroughly enjoyed their time and they don't love the product, they'll be honest about it and we can work through it.
Yeah.
And that sets us up to just build that culture, build that community. It's been interesting that you say we're going to need more people and building a team, because that's already started to happen. So another God thing, I've had a friend of mine, his name's Nathaniel, for a good long time now, 4 or 5 years probably. And he went to a college near here, got a degree in audio engineering, and that's been like his thing. And he's wanted to work in a recording studio, but he's done more like church tech jobs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I always looked up to the guy. Like I brought some of my mixes to him a couple years back because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know you do. So tell me what I'm doing wrong. But anyway, it was in my head to reach out to him in like the first month of the studio. And so I called him, left him a message and said, hey man, I don't know if you've heard about this, but I opened a recording studio. I know, it's crazy. Anyway, you should come by, check it out. I don't know what working together would look like, but that would be cool. And he called me the next day and said that he had been looking to transition out of his job, and my idea was actually really, really interesting to him. And so he came over and sat down, and we talked through my mission and my vision of the space and the place. And it was just like I told you, talking to friends about dreams, and usually they were like, okay, Jeremiah, that's pretty crazy, but there was something different about this one.
Right.
It was the same case with Nathaniel. He said, I've heard you say a lot of ideas, and I never really paid attention, but this sounds not just really good and like it'll work, but something I want to be a part of. And so I don't know how to hire him yet.
Sure.
Because like I said, I'm figuring it all out.
Yep.
And we're not in the financial space to hire someone anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he's doing contract work for us. Okay. So whenever I have recording projects, I bring him in on it. And so we're already like building that culture.
Yeah.
Even though it's still, ground up.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and it reflects well on you then too, to have somebody behind the booth that really knows what they're doing. So as you're bringing these people in, as we were talking earlier, you're like, the best way to do it is by then recommendations from other people recording. And they come in and they're like, oh, okay, this isn't just some guy. He's got another guy with him that knows what he's doing as well.
Yeah.
That just reflects good on you, reflects good on the business, all the above.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like I've gotten good at mixing music.
Sure.
I don't have a degree in it, and I'm sure, like I'm confident Nathaniel knows more than me. I'm good, and I definitely have things to contribute. But you're right, having somebody that this has been their thing, they devoted years of their life to learning it, and they put a lot of money towards learning it. Like this is their thing, their direction. I know for me, I can very confidently brag about them. So if my job is promoting and bringing in clients, I can really confidently speak to the quality that we can produce because I know that he knows his stuff. And that was a little bit of an insecurity for me for a while too. It felt weird bragging on my own abilities, especially when like I didn't go to college.
Sure.
I've obtained a lot of skills through the stupid projects I've done through most of my life.
Hey, that sometimes is better.
Right. And so I have a pretty eclectic but like wide-ranging gift of like skill and things that I can do. But it's not a college degree, And so it's been a really good system and just team having him there. Also, my brother-in-law who has cystic fibrosis works with Jason, the guy that helps run the business that I lease from, in the video department.
Oh.
So he does a lot of video stuff. So I have somebody to help me with video and somebody to help me with audio. And my sister has been helping me with bookkeeping stuff too, because she does like accounts receivable and stuff like that for her job.
There you go.
and Brian, the guy I'm leasing from, has offered up and given me business counsel. My aunt, who I'm currently living with, ran her own business for a good long time.
So you're surrounded.
My dad's self-employed.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So there's just been such a community of people in my life that have come around and offered different things, even like just encouragement and wisdom and financial, all of these things for such a time as this. It's just been super cool. So good.
Well, I'm so blessed to hear all this, and I'm so excited. I'd like to just kind of end with asking if you had to give one piece of advice then to the audience out there, if like they're in that spot you were just even a year ago where you're like, I've got this dream, this realistic dream, because as you say, I have those silly ones too all the time where it's like you tell people and they're like, But it was kind of the same thing with the podcast. When I started telling people about that, it was like I finally brought a crazy dream that was a realistic one.
Sure.
So it was like, and people started giving you should actually look into that more. To those people that are in that zone, what's one piece of advice you would give them?
Sure. Well, first, I want to clarify something in that, because I definitely understand the mentality of like the realistic goal, right? Because you don't want to.
Right.
When I was a kid, I wanted to build a remote control monkey. You know, like that's. And for a long time, I thought that was a dream. I drew up blueprints. They were bad blueprints, but I drew them up. But in my mind, the place I'm sitting right now was a vastly unrealistic dream. And what I had to learn was just what it looked like to go before the presence of the Lord, to spend time in prayer saying, God, what do you have for my life? And this desire that I have inside me, is this something that you were fostering? And really learning to listen to it and to listen to what he's doing. Because like I've explained, like this is clearly the Lord doing stuff. In fact, I didn't even start to do my thing and pursue my dream until the Lord was like, you're doing this. And so I would just encourage anyone who has an idea or a dream that they feel like the Lord's put on their heart. And if they don't know, spend some time and pray about it. But if you've got something that you sense that the Lord's put on your heart, bring other people into it. Say, hey, this is something I have. Keep going before the Lord. Keep spending time in prayer and ask him to provide. And I think there's wisdom in reading through scripture, in talking to the Lord, and to talking to other people. And then just continue to take it a step at a time. A mentor of mine told me he's always been a dreamer, and he knows that the Lord put that in him. And the thing that he had to surrender was the timeline.
Ooh.
And he recognized that the desires that the Lord gave for me were really good. Desires like, I want to, of who he wants to be, but also the things he wants to do. All of those things are good God-given desires, but learning to surrender what that looks like and when it looks like to the Lord really puts you in a spot of, instead of stepping out and saying, Lord, I hope you got this, instead letting the Lord lead and then you follow. And I would say that's how you set yourself up for success, because you're no longer the one setting yourself up for success. You're following the Lord, and that's what all of the Christian life's about, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So,
wow. Well, Jeremiah, thank you so much for that wisdom, especially there. I'm going to sit and I'm going to stew on that for a little bit, because I'm guilty of that so often. But thank you for a multitude. Thank you for opening this space to have this discussion. Thank you for being so open and vulnerable with the last many years of your life and your mission and your goals that aren't necessarily just yours, as you said. They're definitely the Lord's. And your fact of just being so willing to be open to his goals for you and for his future for you, and taking big, brave steps, because that's a big thing too. You could have just said, he could have kept throwing these signs and these easy pathways, and you're going like, no, it's too much of a risk. I'm comfortable here. I'll stay here. Thank you for taking that big step, because often we're afraid to take that next big step, and that sometimes is what you have to do. Like that dangerous big step. So thank you for that. And audience, as always, thank you so much for listening. I couldn't do this without you. Goodbye.